Hello and welcome to Earth Magic. My name's Mel and I'm your host. And as always, this is brought to you by Sustainable Passion, which is my zero waste and earth-based spiritual reading small business. And I am super excited because I have my first guest here and I want to kind of let her take the floor after I give her a little bit of an introduction. So I'm introducing Alisa, and she's going to give you a little bit of a brief on her name, her pronouns, a little bit about her, and then we're going to jump into a nice conversation where we just kind of intuitively flow with one another. And the reason I chose to interview Alisa is because she is by far one of the most magical, coolest, badass tarot readers I've ever come across. She's so knowledgeable. She's artistic. She does amazing poetry. I cannot amp her up enough to everyone. Anytime I connect with a client, I'm always like, I need to introduce you to Alisa. And we met actually through my small business because I had done a spiritual reading for her. And I'm so honored because I ended up getting some services from her after we connected. And I just feel like I can't capture her. So I hope this conversation does that a little bit of justice. But I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Yeah, just maybe give your name, your pronouns. Tell us a little bit about what you're interested in your small business. I would love to hear anything you're open to sharing with us.
Wow, yeah, thanks, Mel. Hi, my name's Alisa. My pronouns are she and her, and I am an intuitive, a tarot reader, an intuitive mentor, a poet. I really enjoy diving into the nuances of life, asking the big questions and taking the big leaps and enjoying the journey.
I love
So
that. That's amazing. I feel like when I'm listening to all this, there's so much I feel like I've been honored to get to know about you. But the biggest thing I think to me stands out when you're saying all this, and this is just for me and my experience, or maybe where I'm at in life right now, is just asking the big questions and diving in deep because, you know, especially with how fast paced the world is, this like instant gratification we have in the world, and just, you know, kind of these steps I feel like we're taking as society, I feel like people are starting to get more vulnerable into every aspect of their life, whether it be, you know, their spiritual strengths or their mental strengths and weaknesses, and just fully accepting it all. And I feel like you are very gifted with kind of communicating these shadow parts of ourselves and you know, these deep questions that might be difficult and hard to embrace but are important to work through. So I'm kind of curious to hear what you think and why you feel that asking these big questions are very important and how maybe that's played into your life, whether it be as a whole or spiritually or anything.
yeah, I feel like just collectively, I feel like the majority of the collective just kind of tends to skate by in life and not really think about like why we're here or why we're alive or what this realm is or what this place is. And I would say like from a very young age, I was asking these questions. Like I believe that I kind of came here with that curiosity of not just skimming the surface of this experience. So that's when I say like the big questions and the big journeys, like this experience of life is so much deeper than what I think some people even can fathom
Yeah.
or and like try to question or try to think about. So yeah, I don't know, it's just I would say like the key word here is like the curiosity. I
Yeah.
feel like curiosity.
Yes, and I like that you said that because one big thing that was coming up for me is like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more about the curiosity and asking these big questions than it is to find a definite answer. Because when you think you have a definite answer, to me, I feel like it pigeonholes you to, or almost put it on these like horse blinders and to being like, this is it, this is all there can be, or this is my belief. And we see this, you know, in regards to like religion or just even just any type of belief you have, whether it be about yourself or another person, a judgment, whatever it is, where it kind of, yeah, it forces you to have this only one perspective. So if anyone challenges that, or if you see it or sees it a different way, this is literally what has created wars, and and then on a smaller scale can make you feel more distant from another person, etc. And I feel like that curiosity is so important, and I feel like, to me, helps you have a more intimate relationship with life, which to me is what spirituality is. I think everyone kind of has their different definitions, but for me, spirituality is all about whatever makes you feel more intimate with life, like whatever connects you to life, kind of just beyond the physical or the mental sphere, which is why I always say my best example is when you go to nature and you kind of just forget about everything and you're just back in that natural rhythm. And it's funny, kind of going down a different path when you were saying this, it made me reflect back on when I started asking these questions. And I feel like I was the same. I started asking them from an early age, but I was asking them to my parents. I remember coming to my mom, my little 5-year-old existential crisis, being like, what happens after we die? And she was like, I don't know. And then spent the rest of the night crying in my room. And then I grew up in a religious household. So I kind of like, it was just always like this weird thing. And then it kind of never really talked about it. And then when I got to be on my own and living on my own, I started asking these questions to myself more, because I wasn't afraid to ask them, versus like being in a family structure. It's a little bit intimidating to go to your parents and be like, what happens after we die? What's going on? Especially if you have different belief systems. But I'm going to kind of go back on track and say, I really like your approach with this, and that curiosity and encouraging that in people, because I'd be curious to hear kind of what, maybe for lack of a better term, what benefits you've seen in your life because you ask those questions, or how does it help connect you to life, or or what are some of your favorite big questions you've asked yourself? I'm pretty open to whatever you want to answer out of all these questions.
I just feel like there's this big myth about like someone outside of you knowing better than what you do. And I find a lot of like seekers and spiritual quote unquote people can sometimes like find themselves on a quest searching for something outside of themselves. And I think that when you're curious to find your own answers, you can't be led anywhere but inward. And that's something that I teach in like my students and my mentees and people that I kind of connect with one-on-one for readings, is that it's not about like what I'm saying to you in a session. It's about what your heart kind of says back and what you hear back from your intuition about what like advice or what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That like translates to my own experience, because I was also like in the very beginning of my journey seeking outward, trying to find a teacher, trying to find someone to show me the answers, trying to, buy courses or go to school or read a bunch of books and stuff. But there was this like hole of like feeling like there was something that I was missing, or that something that like I couldn't find or whatever. When I ended up finding that, but it was within, like,
Yeah.
and it was anything that anybody like was saying to me, and it's still not right. Like you can take pieces of what someone says to you, but unless it rings true with your own heart, your own intuition, your own spirit or soul, or whatever term you want to use, it doesn't mean that, or it means that it's true if it resonates.
Yes. Yeah.
So like I would ask myself like, well, I guess when I was a kid, I would always ask like why people are the way they are. Like I was very curious about why people acted the way they acted or said the things that they said from a very young age. So I've always kind of been interested in the way that people interact and the way that people are.
Yeah.
Like just core essence, like why someone is different, like why you are different than me. And I think that's like in the very beginning of the conversation when you mentioned like we bring up, like I tend to kind of evoke something in you within the shadow or within something that you don't really want to see or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting, because what you said, I've been finding this a lot lately, especially this kind of like mother spider vibes, like how kind of, you can't see this web of your life that you're weaving as you're kind of going along, because it's like piece by piece. But then if you were to take a step back, it's like the forest for the trees metaphor. You're looking and you're like, oh, this is like a whole web of my life and everything's interconnected. And to me, a lot of what comes up with when you're saying all this and the shadow self and etc. is that every person you meet and every energy you come across or whatever it is in life, it is in a sense teaching you something, especially about yourself, because you're either like, this doesn't resonate, or this isn't my belief, or whether it's like a judgment you're making about someone else that's not correct, and it's something you have to work through, or it's something someone's telling you and you're like, oh, this is challenging my belief, or this isn't my belief, or this is my belief. So you're almost like picking out these like threads in your life, or these like little like pieces of this web of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, whether it's something that challenges you or is difficult or is something positive and you believe in a sense, like it's all building this
Yeah.
life and who you are. And I feel like that's so interesting, because also, especially in the beginning when you started talking about this, I was like, discernment. And I know you know more about this than I do, but would you be open to sharing about that? Because I know you're very, very educated and intuitive with the tarot deck, and I know you know a bit about this and the themes of this year and what the card is. So I
Mm-hmm.
would be interested in getting a little glimpse into that if you're open to sharing.
Yeah, when you're talking about the web and like pulling down and out those pieces, it reminds me just of like you're formulating your own truth, and instead of like looking for someone to tell you the entire story, it's like you can take a piece and add it to your own puzzle, right?
Yeah.
So that energy is very, very related to the Hierophant, which is the way that I read it, which may not be kind of the same as everyone else out there listening, but it's about discernment and discerning your own truth and formulating your own truth from what rings true in your heart, essentially, kind of dissecting these things that people have told you or structures have taught you or your family has even taught you, friends and school included, right? We begin to like take apart the story, take apart the pieces, and then only take away what resonates with us. And that is the energy of 2021, actually. So many of us listening, myself included, may resonate with that. Just being, it's number 5 in the tarot, and numerologically, 2021 equals 5. So that major arcana number will match with the year. So yeah, many of us may be feeling the energy of really feeling like we need to find our own truth, and it's not what someone else is saying.
Yeah, that's so so cool and so interesting. And this, I'm going to try and loop this all together, but this reminds me of kind of what I was thinking before too, which is how discernment to me isn't just about like your belief system, like whether you're spiritual or not, or religious, etc. To me, discernment and what you're saying, this energy, is about so much more than that. It's about your boundaries, like learning a bit more about the influence of a partner or a close friend, and habits, routines, patterns, like all these different things, and starting to take a step back, because I do feel like we get in these almost sometimes we get stuck in this rut, and I feel like discernment can really bring you out of it. And by rut, it doesn't always have to be a bad rut. There can be good in it, and that's why change can be scary, because there's parts that we like, or we don't know what exists outside of this rut. Whether it's like a morning routine, nightly routine, your work, friendship, partner, literally anything, your belief systems. And I feel like starting to ask yourself, like, where's this coming from, or if it's being challenged, trying to view it as the person who's challenging it, and starting to think kind of outside that box, and really deconstruct it. Be like, is this something I've learned from someone else that maybe isn't serving me purpose? And starting to break these down, because to me that kind of is this year's energy. It's going to be a lot of like breaking down these things that maybe we thought were, just normal routines or healthy routines or mindsets, and then getting back to like our core and what's truly aligned with us, especially in regards to like work, personal habits, routines, partners, friends, etc. And a lot of this kind of going back to what you were saying, there was a part a little bit ago where you were talking about how, yeah, that discernment of like, this is my belief system versus someone else's, and etc. And, I totally have that belief. And sometimes I struggle to articulate it because I think this is where sometimes this, and I know we've had conversations about this, the spiritual community especially just likes to like sometimes throw out all the other things to consider in regards to spirituality, which is ethics, morals, the physical side of things, the mental side of things. And sometimes we're like, oh, this isn't true to me, thus, I'm going to do this action, even though you're not considering the kind of, if it's true, if it's not, affect the ethics scale. So, one thing I like, that comes up, and I'll give an example of, is global warming. So this is, and I know we've had this conversation, and it's not just with global warming, it's about with anything. I always tell people, like, you can't really you can't act within like these like spiritual beliefs unless you're also considering ethical and moral values, especially in regards to how what you do affects others. Obviously, not everyone's going to be happy with what you do at the end of the day, don't get me wrong, but there's kind of like this moral scale and like what role we play as individuals, as a collective. So for example, with the global warming thing, it's like, for example, with cutting down your waste or believing in global warming, it's like, on one hand, if global warming isn't true, for example, and you cut down your waste or you do what you can to reduce your carbon footprint, then the worst you did was you used a bit of less trash and maybe you ate less meat or whatever that reducing the carbon footprint looks like to you. Versus on the other hand, if you contribute negatively to the environment, whether it's like polluting a lot, having a lot of waste, etc. And obviously, there's like a privilege in that, and I accept that. But if you're just like not believing in it, and then it turns out global warming is real, which in my opinion it is, I don't even think it's an opinion, it's just like a fact, but let's say it turns out to be real, then you've just contributed negatively, not only to yourself, but to the planet, the like all of nature around you, every person. And I know that sounds like a bit extreme, but we're seeing that in this time too, where people are becoming doctors, I guess, overnight and making very bold claims. And I just think it's really important for us to ask ourselves is like, what's the worst that could happen if we cut down our waste or we wear a mask when we go grocery shopping, etc., versus the opposite effect, you know what I mean? And I don't want to turn this all into like a conversation of all of my views of problematic beliefs, but it's an important thing to do with discernment, especially for people who are spiritual and so sensitive to energy, including their own, and understanding that we don't know everything, and especially in regards to what life is all about. But there's always kind of like this scale that can be more extremist, like global warming and stuff like that, or health orders, versus like discerning your spiritual beliefs, like whether you're more connected to like the tarot deck or like a tree deck, that has a little bit less of that moral value because that's more about you and turning inward. Anyways, that's just what came up for me. I think that's so interesting that we're seeing a lot of this, and I feel like as spiritual people, or just like as decent human beings, it's up to us to educate ourselves, turn inward, like discern, and make sure that we're engaging in beliefs that are ethical and supportive of our collective. And anyways, as I'm wrapping kind of all that up, I'm going to kind of turn this conversation a bit in another direction and ask you about, just because I'm thinking about collectives and how we like there's like a cause and effect, is there any form of collectives that you have either participated in or hosted, or anything that you have felt has been very important for your development, whether that be spiritually or as a person, etc.?
You mean like groups?
Yeah, any form of collective. It could be like a school group, it could be an artist group, it could be a creative group, spiritual group, full moon circle. Is there anything that kind of sticks out for you, or just like great experiences where you feel like you connected with other people?
Yeah, that's a good question. Definitely, I have like a weekly writing group, a weekly like creative group that is just an amazing space. I absolutely love connecting with those humans. Um, I I fully believe that like creation and artistry, there is like a really deep like umbilical cord to spirit. So that really helps me kind of tune in to myself and connect with that like magic energy. I love it. And also moon circles. Yeah, like you mentioned, I host one moon circle a month on the full moons. And yeah, it's just a really great space to connect again to other people, people of like mind, people of unique minds. Just really, I don't know, just witnessing like the uniqueness of the human experience for sure. And also like when we talk about everything as like a mirror to you, when we connect in that sacred space, a lot is reflected back. So it's a really great way to reflect and contemplate and ask questions.
Yes,
Again.
yes. Yeah, I love that. A couple things come up for me because when you're talking about this mirror, that's definitely the energy of the tree cycle that we're in right now, especially with ash. It's just very this mirror like, and I remember talking about this within the tree course that I'm hosting, and I remember you were there and we were talking about this mirror and how, whether someone, yeah, especially once again, we're going back to this, like how when someone says something that challenges you or that supports you or whatever it is this like mirror of like how can I treat this person, how would I want to be treated, how can I set my boundaries, what's going to be best for me and this person, how can I honor this space. And I feel like another thing that you mentioned was artistry, which I know is huge for you and huge for me. Another reason why we were really connected is, for example, I myself don't write a ton of poetry, but and I don't even read a ton of poetry, and I told you this even the other day, but just reading your poems, or there's just something there. And I don't know how much you're willing to share in that realm as to any projects that might be upcoming or anything around that, but I cannot, guys, if you've never read any of her stuff, I cannot recommend it enough. There's something about it where you are literally the only poet that I like follow and truly read everything because it's just so connected to spirit. And when you said that, like this umbilical cord of this connection to spirit through artistry, another example I always give to people is when people tell me they're not spiritual, I'm like, have you ever made art and you just like get so consumed in it? Have you ever seen Soul, the movie Soul by Disney? They talk about this. You're just gone. You're in this like ethereal plane. You're just in the moment. You're in the music, or you're in whatever the art form is. I'm like, have you ever listened to music? Are you not spiritual? Like, that's a spiritual experience. Have you ever walked in a forest or gone in nature? Like, that's a spiritual experience. And one of my favorite quotes when you were talking about that umbilical cord and this connection to spirit through art is from Eckhart Tolle. I think it was The Power of Now, and I always quote it, but it's every artist, whether they know it or not, creates from a space of no mind. And that's loosely quoted. I don't know if I'm getting that perfectly right, but it's true. Anytime I get into an artistic practice, and I'm wondering if you feel the same, literally just thoughts dissipate. They're just gone. And you get into this flow. And I feel like when you're an artist and you're blocked, your thinking is on. That's the best way I can describe probably artist block. And to me, I just have to start creating stuff, even if it's awful, in order to get into that flow where it just thoughts dissipate and I'm just like in that moment.
100%. I totally resonate with that. I was blocked for a little bit here just recently. And I don't know, for anybody who knows Amy McNee, she's at Inspired to Write on Instagram. I follow her quite closely. I love her message about like we need your art and everyone's an artist and but anyway, check her out if you don't know her. But she talks about how when we're blocked, we're not giving ourselves permission to create shitty art.
Oh, I love that. And I'm gonna, first of all, I want to follow her and I'm gonna grab that handle after. And I'm also going to shout out my friend, pretty sure their handle's They Ziggy. So it's they and then Ziggie. And they did it was either like an interview or a podcast, and they talked about this, and it was one of my favorite things. And they're so artistic. They're a trans Black artist, and they're just amazing. And they also, like, they talk a lot about how art has been capitalized, and how we feel like if we're not making good art, then, you know, it's not, we can't get that profit, or there's not, you know, there's not that potential to sell, for example. Like, I know we don't, there's this disconnect. It's like in our mind when we're making like our good art, it's not like, oh, I'm not gonna be able to sell this, but that's kind of how we're treating it. Is we've taught ourselves that if art doesn't look a certain way, especially of what we deem to be good art, because art is so subjective. I could show something I think is crappy to one person, then to another be like, this is the most amazing thing ever. But if we don't deem that artwork good or like worthy, etc., or if we don't think we're capable of topping our last thing, then we don't give ourselves that permission to create the shitty art. And we need to make shitty art. Shitty art is so important. I love shitty art. I make so much shitty art, and it's amazing. I talked to you about this. Now we're going down this direction, and I'm actually so pumped about it, because I literally just sewed for the first time the other day, like using a sewing machine. And I'd always wanted to try that. I want to learn how to make my own clothing, like upcycle scraps of, you know, fabrics that I find, etc. And I made the worst thing I've ever seen. I kind of want to get it out so I can show to people or post it so that people can laugh. Or maybe I'll make it like the picture for this episode. I made like this top. It was awful. I'm not even going to try to explain it. There was like they were trying to make a straight line, just did not happen. Anyways, but I messaged you after being like, I'm literally riding this wave of energy. I'm so excited. And, you know, the biggest things, like the keywords I'd say out of that for me, and why making shitty art is important, and also trying something new, even if you know you're not going to be good at it right away, which is very normal, or even never, who knows, is so important. Is because, one, having like, especially, you know, doing something that's new, especially as you get older, becomes so much more rare to you, because yeah, you don't give yourself that permission to like make those things that aren't going to be perfect. So there's like this, oh my god, I just did something new. It's almost like mind blown, like your mind has expanded, like mushroom thoughts, basically being like, I didn't know I was capable of experiencing something like this, or thinking this way, or doing this new thing, because you literally just have never done it. And when you're a kid, it's just so fast paced, everything's new. So there's also that tie to childlike wonder. So to me, it's like that new beginning, literally like a new life when you've done something new like that, especially creatively. And then the childlike excitement and awe of like, there's just, it's almost like there's nowhere to go but up, and there's so much potential there. I could become the world's best sewer, or I could literally continue to make tops that I can't even get into because it's sewn halfway through the entire thing. So who knows? But I'm just so excited, and I know you feel this like sense of energy too. So yeah, I'm just curious to know if you have any insights, or like anything you want to share kind of about maybe the creative process and how that has fueled you spiritually. Or is that an endless conversation I'm opening up?
Ramble and rant about this, but before I found writing and poetry, I had done my 200-hour yoga teacher training. I had done energy healing. I had done aerial yoga teacher training. I had a stable, steady tarot practice. So I had all these like perceived like spiritual practices that I was like participating in, but I never really found like my true internal spirit, soul, higher self until I found writing. And I always say like yoga has got nothing on writing or stream of consciousness, or just tapping in, tuning into that creative process, whether it is like sewing or, you know, I find that that brings us closer to spirit, closer than any practice that brings us outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
So like yoga, you connect mind, body, spirit, like, you know, but it's still like poses that someone else has taught you how to do, right? Like you're still of like someone else's truth in a way.
Interesting. Yes.
Yeah. So with writing, there's nowhere to go. but inward, right? And
Oh,
yeah, like you find your own voice, your own inner voice through this creative process, whether it is writing. I keep saying writing, but it could be anything,
yes.
right?
It's up to you to discern what that is. Like for you, it's writing. For someone, it might be creating new yoga poses or whatever it is.
Talk about like how you have that curiosity to start something new, right? And how when we're adults, we don't tend to start new things because we're kind of stuck in our ways, stuck in our patterns. But when we kind of circle back to discernment, it's like, who told us like to live this way, right? Does it truly bring us joy? Does it, light us up from the inside out, like doing the same thing day in, day out? Or is it something that comes from within, this like little spark, a little ember of like curiosity that's like, what if I cut this shirt?
Yeah.
Like,
What if I sew
or,
this crappy line across my tiny shirt so I can't get in it? Oh my god,
right?
so funny.
And through your box, right? And that's where spirit lies. That's where growth lies.
Oh,
That's where inner wisdom lives, is outside of these boxes that we
my,
built for ourselves.
yeah. Oh, I can like see what you're saying. My mind is just like blown because this is why, this I don't I'm going to talk about this because I feel like I'm pretty quiet about it, but I'm going to talk about it. So, I used to work for a company that they were selling mushroom products, not magic mushroom products, but medical mushroom products. And
Mhm.
because mushrooms are legalized in two parts of the states, and this was actually a states-based company, I also had to research and learn a lot about magic mushrooms, etc. Have some personal experience with it, which I will air out right now reluctantly, but I'm going to end that stigma right here. But that's that's why I don't think it's a coincidence when I tell people the results of mushrooms and why. So, magic mushrooms, psilocybin, is known for helping heal PTSD. And the reason why that is because you can
Mhm.
people who have PTSD or severe depression, they kind of, you have this only this one way of viewing life or the world or a situation. And mushrooms can basically, obviously, when done correctly, and, I'm not recommending anything here, but it basically, you have this box and that's how you view life or situation or whatever it is, and mushrooms literally breaks down that barrier and takes you outside of that box. And the reason I'm making this is not to recommend mushrooms to people. It's actually to make a comparison to that with what you're saying is like tapping into your unique energy or your unique artistry. So whether you deem that as shitty, it's not shitty. Like it's all literally bringing you outside this box. Like there is something I read recently that was talking about how, yeah, although magic mushrooms, like, or just psychedelics in general, certain ones, especially when done properly and, with
Mhm.
supervision, etc., safely, can be very, very beneficial. And I'm not trying to not validate that or take away from that. That is so true. But however, there's anytime you rely on something outside of yourself, it's like a momentary glance. It'll be there when you access it or when you take that, psychedelics, etc. But you can experience that without that psychedelic. And I think that's so interesting. And there are ways, especially like I was actually just listening to a sex positive spiritual podcast, and they were talking about pretty much equivalent of like that high or like that you would get from like a certain drug can be achieved, for example, through an orgasm in a natural way, or or if, comparing mushrooms to orgasm to writing, but like there's this box and you can access it naturally, whether it be through your physical self, through like an orgasm of some sort, or through your artistic self, which is almost this like spiritual side of you. Because to me, art is not, it's not a physical thing because you can't really teach it, and you can't, it's not a mental thing because, you also can't teach it. Like, I don't know. Anyways, but I love what you're saying about this box and getting outside of it. And I feel like you and I have talked about this, is that there's no right way to do something. There's no right way to heal. And it's
Mhm.
basically like it's time to unlearn basically everything and like discern and tap into your unique energy. And I don't know if you found this with mentoring, but I've had a lot of people come to me who are just getting into spirituality and they kind of need more guidance. And I try to give them like almost like, I'll be like, okay, here's the first few steps, but from there, like make it your own. Because I started off with tarot when I first started doing readings, and I had no idea what I was doing. And then I got into tree readings, and then I started like kind of getting messages as I was reading on, and I would like kind of go off. I started making my own types of readings based off of like my love for crystals, and like just intuitively was coming through. And I think when we challenge this box, we literally get through that shitty art, we get closer to literally our authentic selves, our spirit, inward, everything. Anyways, I just went on a huge rant about orgasms and mushrooms and like going inward, I guess. I don't know, but yes, I I hope you appreciate my rant. I'm sorry about that, but
I totally agree. Like when we talk about like busting through the structures and the box and the boundaries, and you know what happens if we choose to question or step past our boundary. And when it's a conscious decision, and you talk about that high of like an orgasm or a mushroom trip or whatever, like it's kind of similar to that when you start questioning your own patterns and beliefs and the structures that you've created for yourself unconsciously. When you shed some consciousness on those patterns, and then just, and there's the key word, like what works and what doesn't, and then you make big choices or changes to change these things that no longer resonate with you, that is like the ultimate like empowerment high. Where it just, it challenges you to challenge yourself more, to challenge yourself more, to challenge yourself more. And then before you know it, you're quitting your full-time job with no plan because it doesn't resonate anymore.
Wow, who's that at? At me as well. I did the same thing. I feel like we can open this up for so long. So I feel like everything we said has interconnected into one another, and I'm so happy where this conversation went, and I definitely want to have some more in the future. For now, I feel like this is a great place to end and just keep people wanting to explore, try something new, just make shitty art, do your thing, man. Like, we just encourage 20 different things in this podcast, and I feel like it's so essential because it helps us kind of get out of this rut and like get back into, oh yeah, is this my belief? Oh yes it is. Oh no, this isn't. Time to try something new habits, routines, etc. And I cannot thank you enough for being here. This is why I wanted to connect with you, because every time we talk we have these amazing conversations, and I want to close out with giving you the opportunity to talk about if you're hosting anything now, or if you have any offerings that you want to highlight. I just really want to connect people to you. Before you give your plug, I want to tell everyone to read your poetry, connect with her on Instagram. I'm going to put her handles in this show notes. And even if you're not into poetry like me, if you're into poetry or if you're not, you're going to love it. And it's just so earthy and spiritual and magical, and just literally it's so ethereal. Like these words go together in this untangible way, and I am explaining them so poorly because I'm trying to explain your beautiful words. So please let us know what you would like to highlight today. And
thank you so much. I'm humbled by your words.
My words explaining your words. Yes.
Like I appreciate hearing that. So I do one-on-one sessions, so one-on-one intuitive sessions, all virtual right now, whether it is tarot, integrate yoga, meditation, the creative process, creative writing, journaling prompts, really anything that we are guided to explore within the one-on-one session. I also do mentorships, so month-long, usually along the cycles of the moon. We talk about kind of that intuitive development, or like if you're in the beginning of your journey, you're not quite sure what direction to take, I like to offer some guidance and navigation towards the possibilities of your journey. Also have writing group every Sunday. Everyone is welcome to come. That's ongoing. And I think that's it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I am so thrilled. I know everyone is going to be so excited to connect with you, and I literally can't boost you enough. So I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions for me or Alyssa, you can send them all to me. I can forward it to her, or you can reach out to her on Instagram. I'm also going to see if she has any other contact info, like an email or something. that I can throw in the show notes, so you can reach out to her there as well. And definitely stay tuned, because we're definitely going to team up with something in the future. We are just storming up this artistic, creative, spiritual child that we are going to create, and I'm so excited to see what and when that is going to come forth. But for now, we're both offering our things individually. We both are hosting things that we are both a part of, and we will go from there. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, we'll talk to you guys soon.